For millennia, the greatest empires in the world made the exact same fatal error. They marched onto the Iranian plateau with weapons drawn, utterly convinced they could erase the civilization from the earth forever. The Macedonian phalanxes of Alexander the Great invaded here. Relentless Roman legions advanced here. Arab armies swept in under the banners of a new faith, and the savage Mongol hordes of Genghis Khan tore through, leaving behind nothing but towers of skulls. Any other nation would have disappeared permanently after enduring such a catastrophic series of blows. They would have dissolved into the genetic and cultural melting pot of history, just as happened with the Babylonians, the Hittites, or the Assyrians. But with Iran, something wholly inexplicable occurred time and again. Despite losing on the battlefield, losing their capitals, and suffering occupation, the Iranians accomplished what no one else could. They absorbed their conquerors. Within only a few decades, the brutal invaders would begin speaking the Persian tongue, constructing Persian architecture, adopting their administrative system, and even wearing their garments. Time after time, the East essentially absorbed the West and the nomads. How has Iran managed from antiquity right up to the present to compel every major world power to reckon with it? How did they safeguard their identity? And how did it occur that Great Persia, a land with a 5,000-year legacy, voluntarily relinquished its legendary name, obliging the entire world to call it Iran? This is the tale of how a single nation invented the very concept of time we live in today, turned geopolitics into a sacred struggle between light and darkness, and mastered the art of losing battles in order to ultimately win eternity. To grasp the depth of this civilization, we need to turn time far back. Traditionally, the Western world regards Mesopotamia, meaning Sumer, and Babylon or ancient Egypt as the cradle of civilization. In this perspective, Iran is often overlooked, and that is a profound historical injustice. Evolution followed its natural path here. 50,000 years ago, Neanderthals dominated these lands, only to be replaced by Cro-Magnons 36,000 years ago. But the true revolution came later. Archaeologists have uncovered urban-style settlements on Iranian soil such as the Jaraft culture and the Sialk ziggurat dating back 6,000 to 7,000 years. Ceramic vessels from the 4th millennium before Christ conclusively prove that one of the oldest civilizations on the planet developed right here, standing shoulder to shoulder with Mesopotamia and China. The first major geopolitical force in these lands was Elam, a state in the southwest of modern Iran with its capital in the city of Susa. The Elamites were so influential that by the 26th century before Christ, they were practically imposing their will on the Sumerians. But the most astonishing event occurred in the 23rd century before Christ, when the Akkadian king Naram-Sin waged war against Elam. The conflict didn't end with a simple truce. A written treaty was concluded. It guaranteed Elam's independence on the condition that they align their foreign policy with Akkad. Consider this, it is the first recorded international treaty in human history. The Iranian sphere stood at the very roots of global diplomacy. Genetically, however, the Elamites were closer to the peoples of Mesopotamia. The people we call Iranians today arrived later. Between the 20th and 15th centuries before Christ, nomadic tribes began descending onto this mountainous plateau from the north, from the steppes of Central Asia and the Caucasus. They belonged to the vast family of Indo-European nations, representing its distinct Indo-Iranian branch. Remarkably, their ancient tongue was a direct relative of Latin, Greek, and the languages spoken across Europe today, including English and Spanish. Settling on these lands, they began calling themselves Aryans, meaning noble, and named their new homeland Aryan-Empire, the land of the Aryans. Over time, this word transformed into the familiar name we know as Iran. They blended with the ancient culture of Elam and divided into powerful confederations, the most renowned of which became the Medes and the Persians. It was right here in these harsh mountains and deserts that the primary weapon of the Iranians emerged. It was not chariots, nor was it special bows. It was ideology. Long before the rise of Christianity and Islam, a faith was born on the Iranian plateau that turned human thought upside down: Zoroastrianism. For the ancient Iranian, life was not merely a chain of meaningless accidents or a cyclical shifting of seasons. The cosmos was seen as the battlefield of a total, uncompromising struggle between Ahura Mazda, the transcendent god of light, truth, and order, and Ahriman, the spirit of absolute evil, lies, and darkness. And most importantly, Zoroastrianism clearly charted the geography of this evil. The realm of darkness was believed to be the nomadic expanse of Eurasia, Turan, from which devastating raids were constantly launched. It was right here in these harsh mountains and deserts that the primary weapon of the Iranians emerged. It was not chariots, nor was it special bows. It was ideology. Long before the rise of Christianity and Islam, a faith was born on the Iranian plateau that turned human thought upside down: Zoroastrianism. For the ancient Iranian, life was not merely a chain of meaningless accidents or a cyclical shifting of seasons. The cosmos was seen as the battlefield of a total, uncompromising struggle between Ahura Mazda, the transcendent god of light, truth, and order, and Ahriman, the spirit of absolute evil, lies, and darkness. And most importantly, Zoroastrianism clearly charted the geography of this evil. The realm of darkness was believed to be the nomadic expanse of Eurasia, Turan, from which devastating raids were constantly launched. To be Iranian meant to be a warrior of light. Their entire culture, poetry, and statehood were founded on the idea of actively aiding the forces of good. This concept gave the nation extraordinary unity. But Zoroastrianism accomplished something even greater. This tradition was the first in history to proclaim time does not move in a circle. Time is linear. The world had a beginning, creation, and it will have an inevitable and a final battle between light and darkness, a purification of the world by fire, and a last judgment. How did this idea spread across the world? When the Persians conquered Babylon in the 6th century before Christ, they freed the Jews who were languishing there in captivity. Judea became a province of the Persian Empire for 2 centuries. During this period of close contact, Jewish thinkers adopted from the Zoroastrians the culture of anticipating the end of times, linear time, and the final judgment. Later, this doctrine flowed into Christianity and Islam. Prominent philosophers, including Friedrich Nietzsche, recognized that Iran played the decisive role in discovering linear time, the coordinates within which we still think today. The first truly great state of the Aryans was Media, founded in 678 before Christ. The Medes did not endure long, but they managed to topple the formidable Assyrian Empire. Their supremacy was cut short by their own kin, the Persians, in 550 before Christ. A man named Cyrus the Great, half Persian, half Mede, united his two peoples, the tribes of the Persians and the Medes. From this union, he began shaping what historians would call the Achaemenid Empire, the first superpower in history. Cyrus was unlike the despots of the past. When conquering Lydia, the Greek city-states of Asia Minor, or Babylon, he did not destroy their temples, nor did he enslave their populations. He built an empire upon respect. His successor, Darius I, extended the frontiers from Egypt to the Indus Valley. Nearly 50 million people, half the population of the earth at that time, lived under Persian dominion. Darius divided the realm into 20 administrative provinces called satrapies, introduced a unified tax system, minted gold coins known as darics, and established a network of roads along which the fastest state courier service in the world sped. But history does not pardon weakness. In an effort to secure the empire from the nomadic darkness, Cyrus the Great advanced into Central Asia to wage war against the Massagetae tribe, and there the greatest emperor met his fate. The battle was so savage that the Persian army was annihilated. According to Herodotus, the leader of the Massagetae, Queen Tamaris, seeking vengeance for the death of her son, ordered her men to recover the body of Cyrus. She severed his head and hurled it into a leather sack filled to the brim with human blood, declaring, "You thirsted for blood, now drink your fill." Despite this tragedy, the empire endured. We are accustomed to thinking that the famous Greco-Persian wars, the ones with the 300 Spartans, shattered the Persians. That is a Western myth. Yes, the Greeks defended their independence, but for the vast Achaemenid Empire, losing a few French cities was like a mosquito bite. The Persians simply shifted tactics. They began financing first Athens, then Sparta, setting the Greeks against one another. Ultimately, in 387 before Christ, the weary Greeks were compelled to sign a humiliating treaty on the terms of the Persian king Artaxerxes. What the Persians could not seize with a massive army, they purchased. Persia became the undisputed master of Greece without firing a single arrow. The true catastrophe came later. The Achaemenid Empire expanded to such colossal proportions that a weak central authority could no longer govern dozens of different nations. A young, ambitious king from Macedonia exploited this. Alexander, in 330 before Christ, Macedonian phalanxes mercilessly crushed the Persian army. Alexander burned the splendid Persepolis. It seemed the thousand-year history of Iran was finished. From the ruins of the Achaemenids arose the Hellenistic Seleucid state ruled by Greeks. And that is precisely when the Iranian survival mechanism activated. Eastern culture began to systematically consume its Western conquerors. Alexander himself donned Persian garments and adopted Persian court etiquette. The policy of Hellenization suffocated under the weight of the ancient Iranian worldview. In the 3rd century before Christ, the Parthians, an Indo-Iranian tribe, expelled the Greeks and established the Parthian Empire. The Parthian ruler Mithridates I declared himself king of kings and heir to the Achaemenids. For 5 centuries, the Parthians, relying on highly mobile cavalry and the renowned Parthian shot, successfully held their ground against the Roman Empire itself, inflicting crushing defeats on the legions in the Middle East. Then, in the year 224, a new golden era dawned. The Sassanid dynasty seized power, originating from the Pars region, the homeland of the first Persians. They established a fiercely centralized state where Zoroastrianism became the official state creed. Society was divided into rigid caste: priests, warriors, administrators, and commoners, forming an ideal meritocracy. Sassanid Iran was a superpower that fought grueling wars for nearly 400 years, first with Rome and then with Byzantium, for dominance over Mesopotamia and the Caucasus. But these centuries of ceaseless conflict drained Iran. By the mid-7th century, the Sassanid Empire was a bleeding giant. A new, unprecedented force rising from the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula exploited this, the Arab Caliphate. In 651, the Persian capital fell, and the last Shah of the Sassanid dynasty was treacherously slain. All of Iran came under Arab rule. The age of the Umayyad Caliphate began. The Arabs introduced a new religion, Islam, and a new tongue. Zoroastrianism, which had sustained the Iranian spirit for millennia, began to fade. For any other culture, this would have meant the complete erasure of identity, just as it happened with Egypt or Syria, which became permanently Arabized. But the Persians resisted once more. Various Arab rulers attempted to force the Persians to abandon their roots entirely, yet having suffered military defeat, the Iranians retaliated culturally. The Islamic Caliphate, especially under the Abbasids, came to rely heavily on Persian officials, scholars, and poets. Arab caliphs adopted Persian systems of governance. The Farsi language did not merely survive, it outlasted dozens of empires, and the greatest scientific treatises and poems continued to be composed in it. After the Arabs, a true apocalypse descended upon Iran. In the year 1220, Genghis Khan swept in from the steppes of Central Asia. The Mongols did not merely conquer territories, they exterminated entire cities and erased thousand-year-old irrigation systems from the earth. It seemed Iran would become a pasture for nomads. But when the grandson of Genghis Khan, Hulagu, founded a Mongol state here called the Ilkhanate, something extraordinary occurred. The harsh conquerors, accustomed to living in yurts, suddenly embraced Islam. They made the Persian tongue the language of the state. They began constructing grand Persian mosques with blue domes, supporting local scholars and poets. At the close of the 14th century, history repeated itself. Tamerlane stormed into these lands. He erected pyramids of severed heads, yet at the same time, he marveled at Persian culture. He carried the finest Iranian artisans back to his capital, and his descendants, the Timurids, ignited a true Persian Renaissance, transforming their courts into centers of exquisite miniatures and poetry. For nearly 300 years, Iran was a boiling cauldron where political authority belonged to fearsome Mongols and Turks. But upon taking the Iranian throne, within a couple of generations, they irrevocably became Persians. The Iranian cultural code thoroughly reprogrammed its invaders. And then, out of this 300-year cauldron of tribes and dynasties, a man named Shah Ismail rose in 1501. He reunited the land and founded the Safavid state. It was the Safavids who established Shia Islam as the state religion of Iran, permanently distinguishing it culturally and politically from the rest of the predominantly Sunni Islamic world and the Ottoman Empire. Iran once again forged its rigid, unique identity. By the 19th century, under the Turkic Qajar dynasty, Iran entered a period of profound crisis. Following devastating wars with the Russian Empire, the land permanently lost the territories of modern-day Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. By the early 20th century, on the eve of the First World War, Iran had become a stage for the Great Game, the geopolitical rivalry between the British and Russian empires. The country was effectively carved into spheres of influence. The British extracted Iranian oil while Russian troops occupied the north. Later, the Soviet Union even attempted to establish a communist republic in northern Iran. The nation was suffocating under the weight of colonial powers. But Iran would not be Iran if it did not find a way out. In 1925, Reza Shah Pahlavi seized power through a military coup. He charted a strict course toward industrialization and modernization, and in 1935, he made a move that shook global diplomacy. For centuries, the entire Western world had called this land Persia. This word, derived from the Greek name for the Pars region, was associated in Europe with fairy tales, carpets, backwardness, and exoticism. Reza declared enough. He sent an official directive to all embassies. From now on, the country must be called by its true ancient name, the very one they had used for millennia: Iran, the land of the Aryans. This was not merely a linguistic whim. It was a declaration: we are not an exotic colony. We are a modern, powerful nation with ancient roots, and you will reckon with us. The history of Iran is always a history of radical turns. In the 20th century, the nation found itself on the global chessboard, caught between the interests of superpowers. Decades of political upheaval and foreign interference ultimately led to the country erupting in the Islamic Revolution of 1979. The monarchy collapsed, Iran became a theocratic republic, and relations with the West were severed. And today, we witness a striking historical paradox. In the mind of modern man, two entirely different states coexist simultaneously. The word Iran evokes in most people images of geopolitical tension, harsh sanctions, conflicts, and grim headlines. Meanwhile, the word Persia, ironically, has not vanished at all. It has acquired a romantic, almost mythical aura. Persia is linked with lost grandeur, refined poetry, flying carpets, and fairy tale empires. Two names, one land, and a constant, relentless struggle over precisely how it will be remembered. Across its 5,000-year history, this culture developed the ultimate mechanism for endurance. When clashing with Macedonians, Arabs, or Mongols, they did not vanish. They absorbed their conquerors, reshaping them to fit their own mold. They stood at the roots of civilization and invented the time in which we live. But perhaps their greatest struggle is unfolding right now, because sometimes, hidden behind the simple name of a country is a quiet, invisible war between who we were in the past, who we are today, and how the world chooses to see us. Thank you for watching.